Folks, I think the superhero fatigue might be real. And if this year has had anything to show us, it is that the comic book movie is not a surefire success. Critical acclaim aside, fan excitement aside, if you look straight at the numbers, they're just not hitting the way that they used to. So Hollywood might be scrambling to ask the question, if we can't just bet on superhero movies, what comes next? And folks, I am here to say that I believe video games are the future. Gone is the reign of the comic book movie, and now is the time of the video game adaptation. Now, in order to understand where we're going, we have to understand where we've been. So let's talk about the rise and fall of comic book movies, CBMs, as you will see it referred to here. Now, superhero movies have been around for ages. You could go all the way back to the 1920s and 30s for the serials, or the 1960s, like the TV series, the Adam West Batman. But the real kickoff to the superhero explosion, or the comic book movie explosion, could be tracked down to exactly the year 2008, in which that summer we had The Dark Knight and Iron Man release. Both of these movies, extremely different ends of absolute success and absolute excitement. On one hand, you had The Dark Knight, which was one of Christopher Nolan's best movies to date at the time, but also I will still say to date now. The Dark Knight is an incredible film. It still has that sauce. I stand by it 100%. Oscar nominated, Oscar winning performances, incredible writing, incredibly topical. And then you have Iron Man, which was this, honestly, if you can think back to 2008, if you have the capacity to, I mean that, like, if you weren't too young in 2008, Iron Man was a C-list character. Nobody knew Iron Man the same way that they knew now. If you were to walk up to someone on the street and hold up the Avengers, maybe they would recognize Captain America. Maybe. So to take Iron Man and create this explosive hit that was funny, that was interesting, that was exciting, and had so much stylistic interpretations of comic bookiness into film, it absolutely changed the game. It reignited the action movie genre, which had kind of gone through a really tough transition coming out of the 90s into this sort of like, in the 90s we had like the Arnold Schwarzeneggers, the Stallones, the macho man over masculine action movie. And then that kind of died off for a little bit, and we didn't really have a big explosion in the action movie world until the comic book movie. On top of that, this was an absolute given cash cow for, we can take this existing IP and use it to get source material, to get licensing, to get products, and to bounce off of something that people are already familiar with. Sure, Iron Man may not be that popular, but Marvel is. And if we can get people on board with Iron Man, we can get them on board with Marvel. So what happened after 2008? Enter the cinematic universe. Now, regardless of where you stand with them now, it would be unfair to say that Marvel Studios did not absolutely change the way that the entertainment industry wants their films to succeed. Marvel Studios created the first successful cinematic universe in that every single film was essentially an episode of this incredible season of television on the big screen. This episodic formula rewarded viewers for watching every single movie. Not just every single movie on a through line of, Iron Man 1, 2, 3, but every single movie, period. As long as it had the big red rectangle with the white Marvel text inside it. This rewarded fans and casual viewers alike for keeping up with the franchise, and it essentially stair-stepped and stacked the success of every single movie. And with the success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, of course, we had some copycats. And we discovered that, hey, it's actually pretty hard to build a cinematic universe. Of course, DC tried to get into the foray with the DC Extended Universe, or the Snyderverse if you want to call it that. Universal's Dark Universe tried to be kicked off with Tom Cruise's reboot of The Mummy. They were getting ready to do The Invisible Man and The Bride of Frankenstein and all of these movies that ultimately never got made because The Mummy was a flop. We also have Sony Pictures' universe of Marvel characters. The King Arthur franchise was supposed to have a cinematic universe with all old school fantasy fables. Transformers, the Hasbro-verse, so many different things. G.I. Joe, Men in Black, on and on and on. But ultimately, nobody has been able to do it like Marvel, because Marvel took the time and built it out slowly and rewarded the fans for it. And everything else just kind of felt like a copycat. But unfortunately, everything else was also coming out. And so for every win that you had with a Marvel movie, you had a fail on the other side. That was kind of starting to get people in the mindset of, really? Another one of these? That being said, everybody likes a good ending, right? Everybody likes a good ending. And so, after 11 years, 22 films, 3 previous Avengers movies, and 1 overarching story, Avengers Endgame in 2019 capped off the Infinity Saga. It was briefly the #1 movie of all time, the #1 box office movie ever. It did briefly overtake Avatar, but then ahead of Avatar 2, Avatar re-released in theaters, and so it took back the throne. But in either case, it was a culmination of everything. And folks, if you were lucky enough to see Avengers Endgame in theaters, if you were lucky enough to see Avengers Endgame on opening night in a full theater with a bunch of fans, it is a foundational experience for a lot of folks. But unfortunately, the follow-up to Avengers Endgame was the 2020 COVID pandemic, which really put everything into a little bit of a shakeup and really gave us a lot of introspection. But let me not get too far ahead of myself. Meanwhile, as the Avengers was having their success with Avengers Endgame and the culmination of the Infinity Saga, DC's extended universe fully fell apart. They tried to release in 2020 Wonder Woman 2, and it just critically was a failure. It released during COVID, so it didn't really have box office success. The Snyder fans were eating each other alive. The Justice League movie never kicked off. Everything was crumbling in DC. Fox's X-Men movies were bombing. In case you forgot it existed, the Dark Phoenix movie came out. Yes, they were still making X-Men movies around the time of Avengers Endgame. Those movies falling apart as well. Box office success was non-existent. The critics were absolutely panning every single movie, and you could even tell that some of the stars didn't want to be involved. Sony's Spider-Man films continued to lose money. Morbius came out and did horribly. Venom 2 and 3 concurrently did not succeed nearly as well as the first Venom movie, because folks knew what to expect, that Spider-Man wasn't going to show up. And we don't even need to talk about Madam Web, because we all know what happened with Madam Web. But on the other side of things, other comic book properties were not a surefire success like some had hoped. David Harbour, fresh off of his Stranger Things success, tried to do a Hellboy reboot, and it went nowhere. Critically and financially, just no success to be had. So Marvel really was the only one staying on top of the game. That being said, After the conclusion of Endgame and going into the pandemic and into the Disney Plus era, nobody likes homework. So, as we all know now, years after the fact, Bob Chapek took over Walt Disney and ran it as the CEO for a while. He was eventually replaced by the man he succeeded, Bob Iger. But Bob Chapek, in his tenure, was so eager to get Disney their own streaming service and so eager to get their streaming service up and running that he ended up just forcing people's hands to make more content. And so Marvel was pushed to create more and more and more. We also then had the COVID delays, which really pushed back theatrical productions and really pushed back theatrical releases. You had movies like Black Widow and movies like Eternals that were essentially completed but had to sit unreleased because they no longer had places that could watch them. And to the fans, it was unclear what the direction was after having so many years of setup for all these characters, and then the payoff being Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. Suddenly the picture wasn't so clear as to where all of this was headed. And all in all, with all the streaming shows, with all the movies, it was just way too much content. Nobody likes homework, and I'll even say, as a fan and as someone who at the time was eager to keep up with it, it was impossible to keep up with everything. This here was a release calendar that I had found on Reddit, and I actually remember when this happened. This was the 2021 release schedule for Marvel Studios. So across Disney Plus and theatrical releases, for the entire calendar year of 2021, Marvel Studios had one new release at least every single week. Every single week, there was a new piece of Marvel Cinematic Universe media. That is so much to keep up with, especially when the quality starts to kind of go up and down, given that you're having to spread yourself thin, right? So where did that all lead us? Comic book box office throughout the years. So here I've compiled the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the DC Extended Universe, and other comic book properties. These are the Sony movies, the Fox X-Men movies, the Hellboys, anyone else who tried to do a comic book adaptation at the same time. And as you can see here, from 2016 up, we had a great run. 2019, an extremely successful year for Marvel, a fairly comparatively successful year for DC. Everybody lost their money during COVID. You can't blame them. But steadily following that, we are on a noticeable downward trend. Now, let's not pretend like they're not making any money. These are all billions of dollars that we're counting. So a measly $1.56 billion is nothing to scoff at, but it is noticeably less than what they were doing in their heyday. So is this the end of an era? As of this year, in 2025, no comic book movie has crossed $1 billion. We had Fantastic Four, we had Superman, we had Captain America, and we had Thunderbolts, which, let's be honest, no one was expecting Thunderbolts to do gangbusters, but no comic book movie has crossed $1 billion. Half of the comic book movies that released this year didn't even make $500 million, didn't even reach $500 million, which used to be a guarantee back in the day. And, you know, is this a sign that people are not turning up for these movies the way that they used to? Now, I could very easily be proven wrong next year. Next year, we have Spider-Man Brand New Day, and we have Avengers Doomsday. We do also have Supergirl, which is going to be running off of the good faith that Superman has produced. Could we see better turns for all of those movies? It's very likely. People love Spider-Man, people like the Avengers, but I can't sit here and confidently tell you that any of those movies will be billion-dollar movies. I could say lightly confidently tell you that Spider-Man will be a billion-dollar movie. Is Avengers Doomsday going to be a billion-dollar movie? Don't know. I genuinely don't know. And that's weird. That's weird to be in this place. That being said, if the comic book movie is dead, then what comes next? I say, let's take a look at the video game industry. So why should we look at video games? Well, in this chart that also tracks billions of dollars, they had a very similar trend following the 2020 pandemic. And you can see that console and video game sales skyrocketed, and unlike the comic book movie industry, they've continued to do pretty well year over year in the post-COVID days. So just in July of 2025, now granted this month was a little inflated with the release of the Switch 2, the United States spent $5.05 billion on video games, gaming software, and accessories. So in 1 month, the video game industry, $5 billion. In 2017, pre-COVID, it was a $36 billion industry. 2 years later, $44 billion. And just in that next year, $57 billion. It is a skyrocketing industry, the video game market. And in 2025, the global video game market, not just the United States revenue, is tracking to be $522 billion. That is an unimaginable amount of money. That is $500 billion. $500 billion in 1 year, the video game industry. Now, this is untapped market. When you talk about everything that is good about comic book movies and superhero characters, it's established IP, it's guaranteed, name recognition, it's all these things. Why are we not looking at this $500 billion industry as comparatively successful? Well, because we all had to start somewhere. So just like we had to look back and understand where comic book movies started, let's look back and see where video game movies started. Now, the first one that I wanted to include here is one that actually I hold pretty near and dear to my heart, which is the Super Mario Brothers movie of 1993. John Leguizamo and Bob Hoskins as Mario and Luigi. Oh man, what a wild ride of this movie. This movie made in 1993 $38.9 million. Nothing to scoff at, but not profitable by any means. That following year, we had our first attempt of Street Fighter. Shout out Ming-Na Wen as Chun-Li. That first soiree into the Street Fighter world, which will be going there again in 2027. $99.4 million. Okay, considerably better, trending upwards. Mortal Kombat, 1995. $124 million. Hey, we're moving in the right direction, folks. We're moving in the right direction. And then, of course, 1998's with Pokemon, the first movie, $172.7 million that year. So, all in all, these were trending in the right direction. But where did these fall in the cultural zeitgeist? Not nearly as successful, save for maybe Pokemon, but Pokemon just kind of exploded because it was already doing everything that we're saying you need to do. Pokemon had the video games, Pokemon had the animated series, it had the theatrical release, it had the card games, it had so many other concurrent things that built up the world the way that Marvel Studios would, 20 years later. That being said, the Mario Brothers movie, the Street Fighter movie, the Mortal Kombat movie, sure, they were successful, but they were also extremely, extremely liberal with their interpretations of the source material. So the trusted IP, the built-in audience folks, were not satisfied with these movies by any means, and neither were the studios. Famously, after the failure of the 1993 Super Mario Bros. Movie, Nintendo would not license any of their properties to be turned into film for decades and decades to come. They were so disappointed with the disrespect to the source material. A few years later, we kind of start getting into the rhythm. And let me be the first to point out, for all the Gamergate guys out there, for all the extremely vocal minority folks, the people who would be the most insufferable in most comment sections, the rise of the video game movie adaptation and the first really successful video game movies were female-led video game movies, with Lara Croft Tomb Raider starring Angelina Jolie and the Resident Evil franchise with oh gosh, what is her name? Mia Djokovic. We have the Tomb Raider franchise and the Resident Evil franchise. Lara Croft Tomb Raider, following the source material, following what made that source material successful, which, let's be honest, was a little bit of a sex appeal and a little bit of I'm a badass with two guns and I'm going to do things my way. Angelina Jolie's Lara Croft Tomb Raider, 2 films, $430 million combined. Very profitable franchise, I would say. Resident Evil franchise kicked off in 2002, albeit not the most faithful adaptation of the source material, but those movies, popular in their own right with a loving fan base thereon. 6 films, $1.2 billion across, and a reboot thrown in the mix as well, a direct-to-streaming reboot. So we're starting to get into the rhythm. It seems that being respectful to the source material is working. It seems that putting the right amount of money and the right amount of artistic intention into it is getting going. Where does this rhythm seem to go from the early 2000s? Into some of our growing pains period. Now, they're not all winners. Here I have just some standout video game movie adaptations in the 2000s and 2010s that just maybe didn't quite hit the way that they were supposed to. I still can't believe that we did a Prince of Persia with with what's his face as the lead, Taylor Swift's ex-boyfriend. Prince of Persia: Sands of Times, 37% critic score. Warcraft, 29%. Assassin's Creed, 19%. Tomb Raider, 52%. So what happened here? What happened? I thought we said we were getting into a rhythm. We did kind of start to swing back into old habits dying hard, where the source material was not being as respected. They weren't leaning on the strengths of the IP, and all of these movies were rushing to do the same thing that every other failed comic book movie did, rushing to create a franchise, hoping to kick off the next cinematic universe, rather than just focusing on telling a good story. But then, the sacred year that changes everything, 2019, it seems that as one orange portal opened, or as one orange portal closed, another orange portal opened. As Avengers Endgame released, we also did have a shift with Detective Pikachu. So 2019's Pokemon Detective Pikachu, the first live-action Pokemon film, releases to moderate success, $433 million at the box office, decent critic score, decent, even better audience score. We also had the Sonic the Hedgehog movie premiere, also make its money back, loved by the fans. And then, of course, most recently, the Super Mario Bros. Movie, first video game movie to cross the $1 billion mark, all on its own, all on its first release. Even with a low critical score, the audience loved it and folks showed up. We had other successes in there too. The Five Nights at Freddy's movie came out. The Uncharted movie came out. I didn't like the Uncharted movie, so I don't want to talk about it. I didn't think it was good. But the Uncharted movie did make a lot of money. And no, I didn't like it. It wasn't good. It wasn't good, and I'm not going to talk about it because Uncharted is one of the best game series of all times. That being said, what did these movies get right? Detective Pikachu tried not to lean too hard on creating an original story within the world of Pokemon, because how do you adapt Pokemon? There's so much in there. Instead, they leaned on the source material of Detective Pikachu, and they leaned on that IP to get their leg in. Sonic the Hedgehog, they showed Paramount made the difficult decision to give in to the fan voices of, hey, you need to redesign Sonic, he does not look good. And they listened because they wanted to show people that they cared about their interpretation of the character. And the movie did well, fans liked it, and they were able to do 2 sequels off the backs of that. And then after nearly 20 years, more than 20 years, nearly 30 years later, Nintendo was willing to trust Universal and Illumination into making an animated Super Mario Bros. Movie. And besides the complaints about Jack Black as Bowser, and despite the complaints about Chris Pratt as Mario, the movie still made $1 billion, and it was an absolute success. Even smaller studios started to get into the mix, with Blumhouse adapting Five Nights at Freddy successfully under a very small budget, making a very profitable movie and working towards a sequel. So we're starting to get things right. And then, of course, we get to, the way that things have been changing over the years. So let's take a look here. Our first video game movie adaptations began in the 1980s, and then looking forward, this is throughout the decades, we are seeing consistent growth. Consistently, video game movies are making more and more money, and heading into just halfway through the 2020s, we are nearly doubling the path that we're going on. So let's get to 2025. Is 2025 the nail on the coffin? So the same year that we have comic book movies failing to perform to the same level that they could pre-COVID, even 5 years out from the actual pandemic shutdowns, a Minecraft movie and Until Dawn are our 2 video game adaptations, and both resounding successes in their own right. Sure, Until Dawn was a significantly smaller movie, but with a significantly smaller movie comes an easier window for success. So let's take a look at all of that compared. I have here Captain America Brave New World, Thunderbolts, Fantastic Four First Steps, and Superman, which are all our comic book superhero movies that released this year alongside a Minecraft movie. Opening weekend of every single comic book movie is dwarfed by Minecraft movie. Minecraft movie nearly doubling Thunderbolts and Captain America, and pretty easily beating out Fantastic Four and Superman. Box office totals, I mean, let's look at this. Minecraft movie neared $1 billion. It was just shy of $1 billion at the box office. I'm sure it will make up the difference in licensing and merchandising sales. But Minecraft doubling Captain America Brave New World, doubling Thunderbolts, and leaving Fantastic Four and Superman in the dust. And the most surprising thing of all is this last bit here, the budget. Minecraft movie, which was a astounding success compared to everything else, was the cheapest of the bunch to make. Now, giving Marvel credit where credit is due with movies like Brave New World and Thunderbolts, they have significantly brought down the cost of making these movies. Movies like Avengers Endgame were in the $250 million range to create, but even on those lower ends of 200 million, 180 million, Minecraft movie was able to get off the ground going. Now, I do see a point in chat. Minecraft movie was lucky that it became a meme, but one could argue that that's kind of the point. That you want to lean into the culture that the IP is related to. There is meme culture in Minecraft. I mean, from things of Captain Sparkle's, I used to rule the world, Minecraft song parodies, to the subculture of Minecraft survivals and servers, and now even things like 1,000 person civilization experiment. Like, the whole subculture of Minecraft as a sandbox game is for people to create their own inside jokes, and to have a movie that basically capitalizes and runs off of that, I don't think is just a coincidence. I think it's them understanding who the audience is. I also have an additional chart here which adds Until Dawn, and you can see all of the budgets stacked up against each other. And again, just taking a look at Minecraft movie, leaving everyone in its dust, comparatively. Lowest budget, biggest opening weekend, biggest box office total. Now look, Until Dawn, as I mentioned, is a much, much, much smaller movie comparatively. But if you take a look at this green, it's bigger than the blue. And in fact, it is more than double the blue, which means it made money. So on a significantly smaller budget, Until Dawn still got the job done. Now, video game properties have not just been succeeding at the box office, they've also been doing great on television, with shows like The Last of Us, Fallout, and Arcane doing tremendously for all of their streamers, respectively. Last of Us and Fallout went on to do extremely well, not just in numbers, but also in critical circles. Fallout was nominated for 17 Emmys. Fallout won a Screen Actors Guild Award for stunt production. Arcane won an Emmy for Outstanding Animated Program. And The Last of Us received 24 Emmy nominations and 3 Golden Globe nominations. They were not just receiving the success of the streaming numbers, but the accolades that come with actual respected media. So, in the box office, video game movies are making money. On your TV and streaming screens, video game adaptations are being recognized as successful. So it's coming to show that using these established IPs as a bouncing off board might be a great way to guarantee some success. So where do we go from here, looking ahead? Has Hollywood caught on? Yeah, I think so. We have a Legend of Zelda adaptation that is currently in the works, a live action movie. All we have so far is a cast and a release date of 2027. It's going to be a really stacked. We also have a God of War Amazon Prime series being developed. We also have a Ghost of Tsushima streaming series being developed. This one might be a theatrical film. They've been a little bit wishy-washy on it, but PlayStation Studios is not done. The Horizon series is getting a streaming series. I believe this one is for Netflix. We also have Netflix's adaptation of BioShock coming in the next coming years as a Netflix streaming series. Netflix has also acquired the rights to the Gears of War franchise, which is currently getting ready to go into production. They recently announced the Assassin's Creed franchise is getting a reboot as a Netflix original series. We have Amazon Prime working on... Do you see where we're going here, folks? Do you see where we're going here? Yes, Netflix is collecting them like Infinity Stones. We have the Mass Effect franchise going to Amazon Prime. And we still have another season of The Last of Us and another season of Fallout coming out. And we also have Five Nights at Freddy's 2, Super Mario Bros. 2, Sonic the Hedgehog 4, and Mortal Kombat 2. We have sequels to all of the successful franchises. Folks, are video game adaptations the next comic book movies? They already are. Is this the future? Always has been. It already happened, folks. The proof is in the pudding. Exactly, chat. Now, that is a lot of adaptations. If we just cycle through, if you were getting a little overwhelmed, are video game adaptations doomed? With Netflix being Thanos, is this inevitable that we will go towards the same cycle of what happened with comic book movies? Are we going to oversaturate the market? Are we entering into a space with fan base that is too divisive? We're already seeing this happen with The Last of Us Season 2, where the fan base is getting a little bit entitled the same way that they have been with comic book movies. Think Snyderverse fans. Sonic the Hedgehog movie, yes, it did listen to fans and redesign their character, but on the other hand, you could say, yes, it did cave into pressure from a vocal audience and spent millions of dollars bending the knee to their will. Granted, I do still stand by, I think it was the right decision for the Sonic franchise, but we have a loud, entitled fan base here. And I say that as a fan of movies and as a gamer. We are entitled. We have a sense of ownership to these characters because we are these characters. I am Link. Link doesn't speak, but I speak when I play The Legend of Zelda, right? We also have source materials still doing well. Source materials are going to continue, even though we have, and I'm realizing I didn't include it in here, even though we have Zach Kreger developing a Resident Evil movie, we still have Resident Evil games going on. Even though we're going to get another Super Mario Bros. Movie, the Mario franchise is still going to have another game coming out. And so that cultural relevance is going to keep going in one way or another. The same way that it happens with comic books, where comic books still come out, even though most people are spending their time talking about the movies and the TV shows. The books are still coming out too. So are video games doomed? Maybe, but that's the beauty of what is at the top of the food chain in the box office and in the world of entertainment. It goes in cycles. We had the musicals, we had the westerns, we had the testosterone macho man action movies, we had the comic book movies, and there will be something next. We had the young adult novel craze. Oh my gosh, the Maze Runner, Twilight, Hunger Games, all of those. It goes in cycles. So, should the video game franchise become the future of Hollywood? It already is, folks. We are living in it now. So, my question to you is, what games do you want to see adapted? What are you hoping becomes the future of the entertainment industry? Are you hoping to see more Fallouts, more Far Cries, more Dead Space? Are you hoping to see Final Fantasies or Kingdom Hearts? Are you hoping to see The Sims movie? Oh my god, what does that even mean? I'm curious to know your thoughts, because we're here. This is where we're at. Video games are going to be thrust upon our screens whether we're ready for it or not. So let's have some fun and try and figure out what we would want to see. I do still think a Kingdom Hearts animated movie would be incredible, or an animated series would be incredible. Final Fantasy X would do great as a movie adaptation. I do think Dead Space would be great. I'm realizing I accidentally named all the ones that I would like. Legend of Zelda Wind Waker would have been awesome, or Twilight Princess would have been awesome. Roller Coaster Tycoon, The Sims. So many great ones. I would love a second shot at Uncharted. But folks, let me know what video game movie you'd like to see. I also think a movie that I think would go crazy, but I have no idea how they would actually be able to do it. A Fortnite movie would go so crazy. Okay, here's my pitch. Here's my pitch for the Fortnite movie. You pick a character. This could be just like random character. You don't do that bullshit where you like, I got sucked into the video game. No. There's lore already in the Fortnite universe. You just have it be random lead character gets dropped in, and they are surviving this battle royale. And as they're going along, they are battling random characters, but also battling random IP characters, right? You can have your lead being chased by the Predator, or having to partner with Optimus Prime to take out Darth Vader, only to have to then betray Optimus Prime, right? Like, you have all these different IP. You lean into the fun, because that's what you would do. That's what Fortnite is. It's if you were to tell someone a game around a Fortnite as like a story, like, oh yeah, so I was Spider-Man, and as Spider-Man, I got into a fight with Batman, and then I kind of teamed up with this fish guy for a little bit, and we had some fun, but then he got sniped out of nowhere, and then I won, right? Like something like that. Way Out movie, GTA series. Okay. A Way Out movie would actually be good. I know that they're doing a Splitgate movie, and I think Sydney Sweeney's attached to that, which we'll see. Fortnite movie would absolutely destroy the box office, yes. But Splitgate movie's coming. A Way Out movie would actually be pretty good. Kind of like Prison Escape? That's not what it's called. Prison Break. There's so much potential here. And folks, if you have a favorite, I wouldn't put it past that it might be coming on the horizon. So are video games the next big trend in Hollywood? Yes, and it's already happening. So keep an eye out for Tomb Raiders and Call of Duties and Freddy Fazbear's and Luigi's and Amy Rose's. There's so much coming to your screen soon. I, for one, am excited but cautiously optimistic. Look, at the end of the day, as long as we are still finding ways for artists to get excited to interpret stories and put their own spin on it, that's what I'm excited for. Whenever movies come out like Aquaman Part 2s or Ant-Man Quantumanias that feel like corporation put ideas into a box and spit it out and that's the movie, I'm not eager to see those type of things. The same way that Prince of Persia and the original Assassin's Creed movie just felt like folks trying to grab a box that said video game movie and jingle it till cash fell out. That's not what I'm excited to see. But when I see artists put care and intentionality and vision into these works, like things like The Last of Us, even things like the Mario Bros. Movie, where I thought they were being very cute and intentional with the stories they were telling, things like Fallout, I'm definitely excited to see more things like that. The same way that I'm excited to see things like, Spider-Man Brand New Days, or excited to see things like Fantastic Four First Steps, right? Like, see unique views into the type of movies that are coming out. So what comes next? I'm going to say we're in the midst of a horror movie renaissance, but I think after video game movies, the big blockbusters are going to be maybe disaster movies. Let's have a disaster movies comeback. I don't think we gave them enough. We didn't give them enough of a time. All right, folks, that's going to do it for me tonight. If you hung out with us live, thank you so much for hanging out. We are live every single Monday on Twitch, so make sure you head on over and give us a follow so you know when we're live. If you are watching this on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We always post our movie news Mondays and our little breakdowns. Feel free to give me a follow over on Instagram and TikTok as well, so you can see our short clips and also know when I'm going live. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I will see y'all next time. Yes, GG's. GG's does feel right for a night.